Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Day 8 out of 50 of the SAT math prep, getting everyone ready for the August SAT. Today we'll be working on geometry and trigonometry, and specifically we're going to be dealing a lot with SOHCAHTOA. So if you're not familiar with that, please stay tuned, and this episode is going to help you a lot. If triangle, looking at the first question, triangle FGH is similar to triangle GKL. Similar, where angle F corresponds to angle J and angles G and K are right angles. If sine of F equals 308 over 317, what is the value of sine of J? Okay, so I'm going to draw these out quickly. F, G, H. J, K, L. So take note how it says the triangles are similar. This means that the sides, the lengths of the sides are going to be proportional to one another. So if this side, let's say it's x, is half of this side, so this would be 2x, the same is going to be true for over here, even though we don't know the value, because this over here might be like 7, this might be 14, and over here it might be 5, and this might be 10. So it just means they're proportional to each other. Like if one increases by 2, the other will increase by 2. So erasing this, because that's just some background you kind of need to know. We're going to look at what the question is asking. What is the value of sine of J? So when it asks for an angle, sine, cosine, tangent, you need to know the rule for SOHCAHTOA. So I'm going to write it out. SOHCAHTOA. So I'm going to underline each of these. And pretty much SOHCAHTOA is an abbreviation for sine is the S, and it's equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. If I lost you on that, I'm going to explain it a little further. We have opposite and hypotenuse are just sides of the triangle. Same with adjacent. It's all referenced to the angle we're looking at. So in this situation, sine of F, always draw the angle F. Sine of F would be opposite over adjacent. So we have our sides. This would be adjacent, the adjacent side. The adjacent side is always the side touching the angle. That isn't the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. So this would be the hypotenuse. The adjacent is not the hypotenuse, but the side still touching the angle. And then the opposite side is the remaining side. And yeah, that would be all our sides labeled adjacent, opposite, and hypotenuse. And looking for sine, we know that sine is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So this would be opposite over hypotenuse. And that would give us our sine value of 308 over 317. So opposite over hypotenuse, this would give us 308 and 317. Now looking at this angle, sine of J, sorry, here. It's asking for the sine of J. So if we know that these angles, if we know that these triangles are similar, we know that their angles are going to be congruent. So in other words, the same. Because that's a geometry rule you kind of just have to memorize if it isn't intuitive to you already. If the sides are going to be proportional to one another, the angles will in turn be congruent. So this angle F, the sine of angle F is going to be equivalent to the sine of J. So if it's equivalent, sine of j is equal to sine of f, which is equal to 308 over 317, giving us answer B. I know I didn't have to go through this whole SOHCAHTOA rule if you just knew that rule already about it being the angles being congruent for similar triangles, but it's a good foundation to have to tackle with a bunch of different problems. Okay, looking at the next problem, intersecting lines R, S, and T are shown below. What is the value of X? Okay, the value of X. So we're looking for this angle over here. The problem's kind of small. I'll zoom in. Looking at this, we need to find this angle so we can find the supplementary angle X, but we don't have this angle yet, so we're going to work our way towards it. So I see a triangle right here. So if I find this angle, I could find that angle and then find that angle. These are just puzzles pretty much. So I know that this angle and this angle are supplementary. So we know that supplementary angles add up to 180. So 180 minus 106 is going to give us this angle over here, which is 74. So this is 74 degrees. And then we know that the angles inside a triangle always add up to 180. So if the angles inside a triangle always add up to 180, ignore that, sorry. We know that 180 minus 23 minus 74 is going to give us this angle down here. Let me use my calculator for this. 180 minus 23 minus 74, and that's going to give us 83. And then we can find our supplementary angle here. Once again, doing 180 minus 83, which is equal to 97. And that's going to be our X value. And you'll input that into the computer since this is a fill-in question. Let me see what difficult. That was a hard question, apparently. So if you get those points, I'm not sure if they still score it the same way. But I've heard that if a question's hard, it's worth more points than an easy question. Like, for instance, a hard question might be 20 points, a medium question might be 10, an easy question might be 10 also. I really don't know. Or 30 for hard, 20 for medium, 10 for easy. They haven't released the scoring guidelines. But yeah, so it's very important to get those hard questions down. Looking at this next question, a right circular cylinder has a volume of 45 pi. If the height of the cylinder is 5, what is the radius of the cylinder? Okay, so you need to know that the volume of a cylinder is equal to pi r squared times the height. This is on your formula sheet, but if it helps you, pi r squared is the formula for a circle, or the formula for the area of a circle, and multiplying by the h, the height, is going to give you the volume of the cylinder. So draw it out. Just the area, and then if you multiply by the height, you're going to get the volume of the cylinder. Okay, so we know that that is equal to the volume of the cylinder, and we also know that we have 45 pi, which is equal to that. And we're going to write this out again. So now we can solve for our r by plugging in for h. So we know pi r squared times h, which is 5, is equal to 45 pi. Then r squared, we divide by pi and 5, which is going to give us 9 on this side, and then we take the square root of both sides, and we're going to get r is equal to plus or minus 3. But we can neglect the negative value here since we're dealing with volume, and volume can never be negative, so r is just going to be equal to 3. Sometimes math forces you to look at the logical answer if you're given 2. So that's a medium question, medium difficulty. Looking at this one, square of a hard difficulty. Square A has side lengths that are 166 times the side lengths of square B. The area of square A is k times the area of square B. What is the value of k? Okay, so we're gonna draw our square A, and we know that square B is much smaller. These are obviously not to scale, and they're not very well drawn, but deal with me. So we know that, let's say these sides are x each. I'm not going to write it for every single side, but you get it. And then these are 166x. We know that this is a much bigger triangle and it's going to have a much bigger area. So we know that the area of B is equal to x squared. And we know that the area of A is equal to 166x times 166x, which is equal to 166 squared times x squared, which is equal to 27,556 x squared. So this is equal to the area of A, and it's asking what's the value of k if k times the area of square B. So looking at this value, we need a k value which represents this coefficient, because I'm going to write them one on top of the other. This would be k, because 27,556 x squared, the k is the amount of times larger square A's area is compared to square B. I hope that makes sense. So this would be kx squared, and the value of k is just the value we found, 27,556. So that is your answer. We're going to do one more problem. In right triangle RST, the sum of measures of angle R and S is 90 degrees. I'm going to draw this quickly. R, S, T. We know that T is the right angle since R and S add up to 90. So they can't be 90 by themselves. The value of sine of R is 15, square root of 15 over 4. What is the value of cosine of S? Okay, so sine of R, we know that this is our adjacent side, this is our hypotenuse, and this is our opposite side. We know that sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. And we know that cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Right now we're looking at sine, and sine opposite over hypotenuse is equal to 15 square root of 4. So sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which is equal to square root 15 over 4. I know I'm repeating a lot of stuff, but it's important that you get an understanding of opposite and hypotenuse and adjacent. So opposite is equal to square root of 15, and hypotenuse is equal to 4. So we have these values for the side lengths, and they're not going to change regardless of what angle we're taking. Now we have cosine, and we're looking for cosine. We don't know what cosine is. So what's the cosine? Sorry, let me distinguish this quickly. It's sine of R. Now we're going to take cosine of S. So I'm going to erase the O's and the H's because they are going to change for angle S. So looking at angle S now, this is the adjacent side, this is the opposite side, and that's the hypotenuse side. So these values stay the same, as I said before, but now we're looking for the cosine angle. So adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent, which is equal to square root of 15, and the hypotenuse, which is equal to 4. You know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and this is going to give us square root of 15 over 4, which is the same as sine of r. Coincidentally, not coincidentally, there's trigonometric rules, but the easiest way is to just solve it and not rely on a rule, because if you forget it on test day, you're kind of lost in the dark. So I hope practicing these trigonometric and geometry rules helped. And just a little recap, always reference the reference sheet when you have a volume problem, so you can set it equal to an expression and the volume value they give you if you're solving for a variable. For area, always compare the expressions if it's asking for a constant. And for trigonometry, remember your SOHCAHTOA. If this helps, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you